Hi, welcome back to my channel, Growing with Dr. Ike. So, this week, we're going to talk about the emotional parentification of the eldest daughter. Last week, I kind of brought you up to speed with the psychological burden of being the eldest daughter. But you can't really appreciate the eldest daughter and who she is without understanding how she was manufactured. So, what you have to understand about the eldest daughter is that she came up in a dysfunctional family system. It's important for you to know that because we wouldn't even have the eldest daughter. She would just be a daughter that just so happens to be the oldest. What makes it so insidious and why we even have the title eldest is because of how she was manufactured. So when I say that she was parentified, you have to understand that she basically raised herself. We would call the eldest daughter an orphan. Most eldest daughters will tell you that they were responsible for everyone at a very young age, their parents, their siblings, and the responsibilities of these people as well. Now, you may be saying, well, Dr. Ike, that's a lot. You're right. But you may also be asking yourself, well, how did they manage all of that? They disassociated. What you'll find that a lot of eldest daughters right now today are still disassociating because they never got back in their body. And disassociation is nothing more than detaching from something, detaching from a relationship, severing something in order to kind of protect yourself. And so a lot of eldest daughters begin to do that because typically that is normal with a child. When they realize that their need will not be met, they have to then do something in order to be able to even survive in an environment that may not necessarily be safe for them. That's another thing that the eldest daughter hasn't learned is safety. But we'll talk about that in another video. But to understand how they were emotionally parentified, you have to understand that when they came earthside, they were only responsible for one thing, and that was productivity. That's what number one represents. And so for her to be a daughter in a dysfunctional family system that is rooted in patriarchy with the backdrop of religion, where she come from a long line of misogynists, she was expected to be responsible. Now you may say, well, Dr. Ike, what if she had an older brother? She still is the oldest because remember, we got a patriarchal system. Now you may be saying, what if she had a blended family? And in one dynamic, she was the oldest, but in the other dynamic, she was the youngest. It doesn't matter. She still was the oldest. And she may even got hit even worse because she played two different roles in two different families in order to be seen, heard, and validated. So when you think about parentification, this is a role reversal. That's what parentification is. It's when a child takes the role of a parent and a parent takes the role of a child. And the eldest daughter is very used to that because her father recused his position. Now you may be saying, well, Dr. Ike, what if I feel like I'm an eldest daughter, and what if I feel like my father was available and loving, but my mother wasn't? You know what that tells me? That tells me that you don't understand that you were indoctrinated into a patriarchal system, which means to tell me also that you don't realize that you were conditioned to protect men and question women. That too is for another video. So the eldest daughter was emotionally parentified, but she disassociated in order to be able to survive an environment where she wasn't seen, heard, and validated. But with that, she became a caregiver very early. And when a child becomes a caregiver, they don't learn how to take care of themselves. But even more, what I want you to understand that the eldest daughter didn't learn is she didn't learn consent. Now, you may be saying, now, Dr. Ike, that's really random. Consent? Exactly. See, in order to really be able to appreciate the importance of staying in your body, you got to understand what made you detach from it. See, the eldest daughter came from an environment with two people, a mother and a father. A mother that wasn't sovereign meaning she wasn't fully self governing. She couldn't take care of herself financially, emotionally, psychologically. So she depended heavily on a partner, a man. She was either running from something, meaning poverty, or some form of abuse from her childhood. And so automatically, her mom, the eldest daughter's mom, came in a deficit. So that immediately put a burden on the eldest daughter. So now she immediately became a daughter who was always trying to save her mother. And some of you today who are eldest daughters or might be still trying to save your mother right now. But then if she was saving her mother, she was trying to protect her father. Because remember, she was indoctrinated in a patriarchal system in which she had to protect this man who was supposed to be a king, so to speak, in her eyes. Because technically, the birth order number one is supposed to be attached to the father, meaning she is technically supposed to have a really good relationship with her father. The gag is, or the lie that she perpetuates is that it is a good relationship, when really it isn't. So the eldest daughter has spent her life managing the emotions of adults, raising and being responsible for adults, disassociating in order to protect herself from having to really deal with a situation that she could do nothing about because she was a child, saving her mother, or at least trying to, meaning, and you may be saying, well, Dr. I, what does save look like? You ask great questions. Saving meaning she was trying to protect her siblings from her mother's poor choices, protect her mother from her poor choices, saving her mother and hoping that her mom would actually see her worth so that she could then mirror it back to her. So the eldest daughter learned how to perform very early. But then she also was protecting her father from being looked at as the bad guy by the mother. How ironic is that? See, patriarchy will make you in one hand protect someone, i.e. your mother, or save her, and the next minute throw it right up under the bus. Because we can't let these men and their fragile egos be disrupted. We can't let these men be inconvenienced. We can't let these men feel frazzled. So the eldest daughter was over here trying to protect her dad's fragile ego. She was managing his emotions because in a patriarchal environment where you have misogyny says that we have to soften our no as women. We have to be uncomfortable while men are comfortable. It says that we have to manage their emotions when they are feeling flustered. It's a lot of work. And the eldest daughter did that for many, 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 many years. Now, you may be saying, wow, that's a lot. Exactly. So, the eldest daughter didn't just come into the world intending to perform, she was indoctrinated to. And she was taught to dismiss her feelings because she had to make sure that everybody else was okay. So if you wonder now why the eldest daughter is the responsible one in the family and always ensuring that everybody else is good, even to her own detriment, it is because at a very early age, she was taught that. Now, as an adult, what it looks like is codependency. We'll talk about that in another video. But that's why the eldest daughter now has a huge problem worrying about other people, even when she wasn't asked to. I'll give you an example. Let's say the eldest daughter has a friend and her friend is going through a tough time. The friend never asked the eldest daughter to step in, but the eldest daughter has a knack for hearing someone complain as a cry for help. And that's not necessarily true. Sometimes what the eldest daughter hasn't learned to realize is someone else's emotional burden is not her cue to step in and save them. But because she never was taught that as a child, she doesn't know that as an adult. So as an adult, she still feels the need to save people because in her mind, I never want people to have to go through what I went through. But what ends up happening is she'll step in and help someone, and then later that person may resent her for it. then she'll get mad and feel like she did something wrong and then resent the person right back because she'll say, I was there for you. I helped you. I did this. I showed up for you. I took care of you. I gave you money. I did this. But what I want you eldest daughters to know, remember, the operative thing that's the most important is no one asked you. That's the hardest thing for a lot of eldest daughters to realize because when you've been emotionally parentified, everything to you sounds like someone needs you. But the operative thing that you have to realize as an adult is no one asked you. So you have to be very mindful of how you make your trauma someone else's resolution. Because just because someone is in need doesn't mean that that's your responsibility. And also, the eldest daughter has got to learn how to not get her high off of being needed because that is something else that she falls prey to because of her emotional parentification is feeling like it's a humble brag for someone to need her when really it's a pathway to exhaustion and burnout. So, the moral of the story is the eldest daughter was emotional parentified, and through that emotional parentification of learning how to manage the emotions of her parents and other people, she learned that she had to save her mother, but at the same time, she was protecting her father from her mother being upset with him and maybe feeling like he was not doing his duty. But also, she was protecting him from the very construct that he put the whole family in, and that was patriarchy. But even as she was doing that, she was subtly, slowly making herself small and forgetting totally about her emotions. And she learned to disassociate in order to survive an environment that was very difficult. But even as she was disassociating, she grew up to be a person who felt like she always had to save people, even at the expense of her own self and sometimes health. So, if you're an eldest daughter and you are listening to this video, don't outsource your validation by trying to show up for others when you have yet to show up for yourself. So, until next Tuesday, be good to yourself, and I love you.